All right, everybody. We have some fights, some well-known boxing names this weekend on a couple of different networks. The headliner is Jose Ramirez versus Viktor POSTOL. Now, this fight was supposed to go down February 2nd in China. And that got scrapped. Then May 9th in Fresno, and they had to get rid of that date also. So now it's on for Saturday at the MGM Grand Bubble, as they call it. Okay, this fight comes on live on ESPN Plus at 7:30 p.m. Eastern this Saturday night. This, I think, represents the first matchup between two world-class guys whose names ring bells. All right. Now, had this fight taken place in Fresno, where Ramirez sells out arenas like Terrence Crawford does in Nebraska, I would have taken Ramirez big in that fight, like a 7th round breakdown stoppage kind of big, okay? And when we talked in previous videos about fighters feeding off of crowds and then having to fight instead in arenas with like less than 100 people due to the pandemic, this is one of those situations. Now, I'm not calling for the upset, okay? I don't think the upset happens here. However, I think POSTOL is in better shape in this situation versus fighting in Fresno in front of 12, 15,000, something like that, okay? I'm interested. It'll be interesting to see how Ramirez fights without that crowd energy we spoke of. So, keep your eyes on that. Another interesting thing, and bothersome to be honest, is Ramirez's trainer, Robert Garcia, okay? He's been with Garcia since around 2018. He was with Freddie Roach prior, from like 2012 to 2018, and then he fired Roach after winning a title fight against Amir Amal, if you guys remember that. And listen, Ramirez hasn't missed a beat. He's looked sharp in his wins over Antonio Roscoe, Jose Zapata, and Maurice Hooker. I think he wanted a trainer who had a little more time on his hands to dedicate to him, and Freddie Roach is the wild card at the Wild Card Boxing Gym. So he just has his hand in a lot of stuff. So but a funny thing happened last weekend as Robert Garcia tested positive for the virus and wasn't allowed to train Robert Rodriguez, in a fight. And even more, last month, Garcia failed another test and couldn't train Virgil Ortiz Jr. Now, both of his fighters won. The point I'm trying to make is he shouldn't be allowed to train Ramirez on Saturday night, right? Because in boxing they had this one and done scenario. Remember, check that, in Vegas, according to their protocol. So if you remember the one trainer who he was a manager, I think. He came in late for his guy, and he was around his guy, and then they kind of scrapped the fight. They said, well, kind of like, we don't care if you as the fighter test negative now. You were with a guy who was positive, and it's like, come on, man. So he shouldn't train Saturday night, right? Well, here's where I have a problem with boxing. Only in boxing. Boxing has no rules, so you always have to remember that. If the fighters fail one test, that's it. They can't fight. Prior to that, if someone on the team failed the test, then that was it. So if a fighter fails one test, just one, they can't fight. All right. Ask Jamel Herring, who had it happen twice. Then he gets tested elsewhere, and he's negative. And see, I have a big problem with that. You can't create a double standard for Garcia. One test, and he should be out. And I'm talking about last week, not this week. He should have been sent to quarantine inside of the bubble, not outside of it. But you let him go. So he leaves the bubble, then comes back, potentially contaminating people. We don't know. Personally, well, I'll tell you my thoughts on the testing. I think there's something with certain people's blood types, which causes false positives in some, and then they go somewhere else and they're immediately negative. And then let's say they use the same test that found them positive again, and they're negative, and then a couple of hours later they're positive, and it's like, what's going on? It has to be something outside of the unreliability of the test. So, one, boxing needs to switch to the Yale saliva test the NBA uses, which is more reliable than that crap they're using now. Number two, you see what happened to the New Jersey lab with all those NFL guys, right? All of them, what was it, 77? Don't quote me on an exact number. 77, 75 NFL players were found positive from this one lab. Then all of a sudden, those results are wrong. They're negative. Well, things happen. So when those guys were tested again through, I guess, some other entity, they're all negative. And it's like, well, come on, man. So this is three. This is a huge double standard if Garcia is allowed to train. In my opinion, Herring should file a grievance. Now, I know Garcia is just a trainer, while Herring couldn't just come back a week later, like Robert, and fight because you just can't schedule a new card out of the blue. I get that part. But at worst, finally, number four, the other option, if you're not going to go with the saliva test and you're going to keep things status quo, have a series of tests done if someone is positive. Just not a one and done. It's just not working, and it costs the fighter in the end. Once again, only in boxing. So we'll know maybe as early as this afternoon. If we see Robert Garcia at the weigh-in, then you know what time it is. Only in boxing, baby, I tell you. All right. Undefeated prospect Arnold Barbosa Jr. He's also on the card. And highly touted prospect Elvis Rodriguez is on the card too. He's a hard-punching guy who has knocked out everyone he's faced and is undefeated in 9 fights. I think he has a draw mixed in there, but he's knocked out everybody in his 8 wins, all 8 by knockout. All right, so once again, that card is live on ESPN Plus at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday night, and it's a 6-fight card. You get 6 total fights. Earlier in the day, we kicked things off with Triple D, not G, but Triple D. Daniel Dynamite Dubois is back in the ring. And no, it won't be a showdown with Joe Joyce, but Dubois is already 5-0 with 5 knockouts in 2020 alone. Okay, even with the pandemic. Dubois is 14-0 with 13 big knockouts. All right, so he takes on Ricardo Snijders, who's 18-1, and who's going to be looking to rumble. This card is also on ESPN Plus and starts at 2:00 p.m. Eastern. And guess what? You get 6 fights on this card also. So you're getting 12 fights tonight. Now Dubois is supposed to be the next big thing in heavyweight boxing. I'm not sure about that. I expect him to look to catch Snijders early and try to get back into the ring to fight maybe a few more times this year if he can. Snijders can box a little bit, and he'll start out that way, but I think in this fight what he'll do is he'll get lured into a fight, and that's when I think Dubois will look to strike. Now Dubois should be careful because Snijders is kind of crafty, and he kind of knows how to give angles, and he knows how to counter. So we'll see how long he can last, or we'll see if the knockout streak continues. A couple of prospects to watch on this card are Sonny Edwards, 14-0. Okay, defending his IBF International Junior Bantamweight or Super Flyweight belt against this guy who's a noted spoiler, Tomas Isamba. So we'll see if he plays spoiler once again. Also, WBO European champion, whatever that means, Sam Maxwell, 13-0, 11 knockouts. He defends his junior welterweight or super lightweight belt against Joe Hughes, who's a former English and European champion. So once again, that fight starts at 2 p.m. on ESPN Plus, leading into the Ramirez versus Postal card at 7:30. Both cards are 6-bout cards for your entertainment. You got boxing all day, folks. Then on Fox at 8 p.m. Eastern, the return of Erislandy Lara, the WBA super welterweight or junior middleweight champion, defending his title against Greg Vendetti. Okay, Greg is 22 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw. And one of his wins was against Yoshihiro Kamagai. And Vendetti, he's this come forward guy looking to attack. In my opinion, he wastes a lot of energy with his movement. And now, here's the thing. Erislandy Lara has promised for the rest of his career that he's going to fight. He's going to abandon his boring style and fight more like he fought Jared Hurd. I'll believe it when I see it. In this fight, I think he should be who he's been prior to Hurd. You got to box guys like Greg. I think, and if he does, I think Lara can kind of jab Vendetti all night. I mean, actually bust him up with the jab if he uses it. Greg is like a combination of like a Rocky Balboa and David Lemieux. He's going to come after Erislandy and come with awkward moves when he does. If Lara hasn't lost much due to age, he can kind of jab and sidestep this guy all night. And as I stated, I just don't like the energy Vendetti uses. And then on occasion, Lara can kind of pop Vendetti to see if he can hurt him. If so, the outcome might be like when Greg fought Michael Soro. Okay, I don't curse much, but Soro fucked Greg up. You hear me? If I remember, I'll add the video below. If not, look up Michael Soro, S-O-R-O, versus Greg Vendetti, V-E-N-D-E-T-T-I. Full fight. It's on YouTube. You don't have to watch the full fight. You can kind of scroll toward the end. If I leave I'll tell you like where you can scroll to see it. But man, he got. If you ever saw, what was the fight? Jerry Cooney versus Ken Norton. When Norton was done, and then the referee was a little late stepping in, and Cooney got those extra shots on Norton, which can kind of ruin a fighter's life. That's how this was. Or when Ray Mercer and Tommy Morrison and Mercer, the referee's trying to jump in and Mercer's landing those extra shots. Or even what's my man's name? Houston. James Kirkland. When he fought, when James Kirkland fought Jersey Boy, I was at that fight in Atlantic City, and Glenn Tapia, and the referee said Tapia had enough, and Kirkland said, "Let me give you another couple hard shots for just because I don't like you." Now, if you're gonna jump in as a referee, you got to jump in, because guys aren't going to stop punching. So it's comparable to those three fights. Vendetti got hit with a couple of shots because the ref was a little late. Also on this card is an interesting fight between Alfredo Angulo. Yes, Alfredo Angulo and Caleb Truex. Now both guys kind of recently have had fights with Peter Quillen, with Angulo upsetting Pete, and then Truex had a no decision due to a headbutt. I think that only went a few rounds. So I don't know. Both guys are at an advanced age, and the Angulo thing was shocking. But Peter Quillen, sometimes between fights and with time off and things like that, Peter's weird. So I don't know if Angulo can pull that off again. We'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting to watch just to see what these dudes can do. In addition, on this card is my main man, Cornflake. The Cornflake is back. Thomas LaManna. He's taking on Brian Mendoza. I saw Cornflake early in his career. I think it may have been on it was in Atlantic City, and it may have been on the Chad Dawson, Bernard Hopkins 2 fight card. Or it could have been on the Jonathan Banks, Seth Mitchell, or it could have been, I don't know what it was, but it could have been Broner versus Gavin Rees. I'm not sure, but anyway. Cornflake's a good kid, man. And lastly, there's a battle of two undefeateds as hard-hitting Abram Martinez, 8-0, 6 knockouts, takes on Louis Arson, 10-0, all 10 via the KO. 2 head crackers. So that's 8 p.m. on Fox. That's 4 fights. You got 12 on ESPN Plus, 2 separate cards, 4 on Showtime. I mean, it's 4 on Fox, and so you got boxing all day, folks. And I went to Box Rec. There are a lot of cards on Saturday. I mean, just everywhere. Mississippi, and it's just everywhere. So I'm trying to think. Something I'm forgetting. Let me see. Something I'm forgetting. Boy, I get mad when that happens. But anyway, on Saturday, I mean, Brazil, Czech Republic, Finland, Germany, Poland, United Kingdom. And if you oh, that's right, if you have BT Sport instead of ESPN Plus, you can watch the Daniel Dubois fight there. The Lara card is in California. You got fights in Florida, Mississippi, New Hampshire, Las Vegas, of course, for the Ramirez, South Carolina. So boxing is back. A lot of it in a form we're not looking for, but a lot of it the same. Last week, and in the last video we talked about earlier this week, I should say, about Tim Tszyu, Costa Tszyu's son, taking on Jeff Horn. That fight was in front of 16,000 people down under in Australia, and boy, he put a beating on Jeff Horn, man. Anyway, enjoy the fights this weekend, guys, and catch you later.